Hello everyone, I'm J.D. Seal and I'm Vice President at SkyView Partners, and I'm happy to be able to give you this presentation this morning on attaining and maintaining the compliance lifestyle. The thing we found with a lot of our customers is that when they pass that first audit, they're so happy, and rightfully so, that they passed. They're very celebratory. Maybe they say, okay, we passed the audit, and they kick back for the majority of the next year until they noticed the next audit has come around. Unfortunately, when you do that, a lot of things fall out of compliance. So a lot of the focus of this presentation is on the ongoing requirements for staying in compliance. That means talking about compliance as a lifestyle. Just like we all need to exercise, we can't just do that in January. To really stay fit, we need to exercise throughout the year. One big struggle that people have is knowing what all you have to be in compliance with. That's obviously the first challenge. You are doing one of the recommended things, and that is attending presentations in the industry so you can stay on top with what the requirements are. Other things are going to your newspaper, and one of the most important things is actually reading the laws and regulations yourself. Obviously, the question comes where to find the laws and regs. So we've listed some URLs that you will be able to get when you either write them down now or when you get the recording of the webinar afterwards. Or a good place to go is actually on the SkyView Partners website itself. So we'll go there very quickly. Go to the SkyView Partners website, click on Information, Laws and Regulations, and you'll see a list of links right there from the SkyView website that will be very helpful for you. Okay. So, the single best piece of advice that I can share with you is that you implement security best practices. If you implement best practices, that you certainly have the best chance to attain compliance with current laws and regulations, as well as maintaining compliance with future laws and regs. It's not a guarantee, but you will be best positioned. First of all, you really want to have a security policy because it documents your organization's stance on security. It's also an excellent source of employee education. Another thing that you would include would be an incident response plan, including forming a team to handle various breaches, as well as predetermine what kinds of actions should be taken for various breaches. Generally, the starting point for implementing security best practices is a vulnerability review. It's recommended that this be done, and many laws and regs require that this is done, on an annual basis. The reason this is recommended is that it looks across your entire system, not just at the reports you're already running. Most regs also recommend that this be done by an independent third party. So those are sort of the procedural type of things, but what are the security and configuration items that you might want to look for? One of the most often addressed areas is something called strong passwords, which typically requires that the password contain a digit, and that you have some type of control such that if someone incorrectly guesses a password or attempts to guess a password, that they would be unable to get onto the system. I think PCI requires 5 of that you document this at 5. We prefer 3. We've also listed some other recommendations for some of the rest of your system values. Another item that's often addressed is least privileged access, which really is the principle of giving users just the authority to perform their job function and no more. In the I world, that's an area that's often abused, not maliciously, but because of the processes that are put in place, especially the use of special authorities. And it comes from the practice of profiles typically copied from an existing profile. Again, it's not malicious, but it can be abused. What we recommend is assign special authorities possibly at the group level and establish a role-based access, as well as, again, review regularly. Another term that's you'll often hear is data integrity, which translating into the I world means you must have your system running at Q security level 40 or 50, because you really can't secure the access controls, and auditing are not bypassed if the system is running below level 30. And you've heard us mention this numerous times as really a 5-star area. If you're not running at Q security level 40 or 50 and you'd like some help on that, please contact us. We'd love to help you. Another of the often addressed areas is logging and monitoring, which translating into the I world again means you're turning on auditing. Some recommendations are to audit for the creation and deletion of objects and authority failures and so forth. With auditing turned on, you can at least investigate a breach if it happens. If you don't have auditing turned on, then you can't even do that investigation. There are cases where you cannot implement best practices because things on your system would fail if you did. But what you can do is document those cases, and especially any compensating controls you can already have implemented. So let's talk briefly about the areas that we see most often fall out of compliance. System values can be changed when you enable a function and never set back. Many times vendors may modify a system value when doing an installation or an upgrade. User profile configurations, things like default passwords, checking for inactive users, special authorities again, and group membership. Managing inactive profiles is a good example, and I'll use that later in the presentation as well. There's a number of ways you can do that, and I strongly encourage you to take a look at the inactive profiles on your system. Disable them, at least delete them if possible. Access control, or what we generally hear as deny by default. These tend to creep further and further out of compliance unless you have a baseline and regularly review. Think about authorization lists if you use them. You're typically very careful when they are first established, but over time, the authorities again tend to creep. We just had an example where an existing customer of ours did that exact task, set up authorization lists, was very careful that the list contained only the users that needed the authority that that list gave them. Then at one point, a group profile was given change authority to the authorization list. And basically their authorization list at that point did them no good at all. Now let's talk about how to prepare for that next audit. Arrival will not be as frantic if the systems are perpetually reviewed for compliance. You can be prepared by updating your policies and procedures and documenting those exceptions. Auditors love to see that in writing. Have work plans ready for what known issues have not yet been addressed. Keep records providing you've been checking on the compliance. Show them that you're not only setting a standard but maintaining that standard. Now a lot of this is certainly a lot of activity. We're asking a lot of people to set those baselines and maintain those baselines. So how can you automate those activities? Automation gives you a lot of benefits. really cuts down on the amount of effort, puts you in a perpetual state of compliance, and certainly gives you the potential for being more secure. So with that, I'd like to move into the second phase of our presentation, which is how SkyView Partners can help. First of all, I'd recommend the SkyView Risk Assessor for IBM I. It's a security diagnostic tool that really analyzes security information from more than 100 what we call risk points across the I-5, and then provides documentation to explain why an issue was raised as a security concern, what to consider before making changes, and how to approach remediating the issues that it discovers. Risk Assessor is a great tool because it literally involves no learning curve. You simply download the software from the SkyView website, FTP to the IBM I partition that you want to run it on, run a short install, type a command, go Skyra, and you're now 100% technically trained to use Risk Assessor. Risk Assessor is not an invasive piece of software. Its jobs are single-threaded and can be scheduled to run at whatever priority you feel appropriate. It can be run interactively, but most of our customers run it in batch or use their job scheduler to run it in the middle of the night. This is my Auditors Love paper picture of what you get from Risk Assessor. The document in the middle is the main assessment guide. This is generally between 40 and 50 pages, but remember it covers in excess of 100 risk points and explains why each area of concern, why each is an area of concern, what things to consider before making changes, and how to use industry best practices to internally remediate the issues. The documents shown on the outside of the main assessment guide are what we call supplemental reports, because in many cases there may be a substantial amount of detail that you'll need to remediate issues. This substantial information is available and automatically generated at the same time as the main assessment guide. So let's just click over and take a quick look at this main assessment guide that we talk about. This is a document that is generated when you run the Risk Assessor software. It starts with, it's in various sections, starts with an area called Your Security Plan. I'm not going to go into the details of this, but this is showing the details, this is showing the information that we would recommend that you would address first. It's a very short section, usually just a few pages long. So even if you run Risk Assessor multiple times, you have an area that you can come back to and take a quick look. It covers your system values, covers what the current system values are, what best practices are, and if there's a deviation. As well as you can see in the detail, it covers, again, why you might have a security concern. It will also cover if there's a PCI consideration, shows SkyView's recommendations as well as steps to take before making changes, and then detailed steps on how you might remediate the issue. So those are good examples of how that's available. Let's page on down to another section which goes into user profiles on the system. And I'll show you an example. Here's a section where this particular user had 42 user profiles that had been inactive for longer than 90 days. Again, there's no changing Risk Assessor. This is best practices. It's going to judge your security versus best practices, which would be 90 days. It will tell you why this is an area of concern, give you some examples of commands you can run to help you manage that, as well as it will give you a reference to a supplemental report, in this case the inactive users report. Let's page over to that very quickly. Which is this report right here. And as you can see, it lists the inactive users that were mentioned in the system, but it also lists things like whether they had a default password or if the status was disabled. So you can use this information to judge for yourself whether you have a security concern. So that's the Risk Assessor diagnostic tool. Let's go back to the presentation. SkyView also has our Policy Minder for IBM I and i5OS, which is a security compliance tool to provide a mechanism for comparing your system's current settings against the requirements you established. Policy Minder is all about enforcing your security policy. It allows you to determine your desired security, document your desired security settings, which is a great help as you go into your next audit to have your configuration documented, and also report which areas of security may be out of compliance. Finally, you can use SkyView's very unique Fix-It function to fix items to comply with your security policy. Oops. Policy Minder also is very easily used. Download the software from our website, FTP it to your IBM I partition you want to run it on, a short install program, type go SkyPM, and you're ready to use Policy Minder. From this screen, you can one of the ways you can get started using Policy Minder is to use the Initialize function. For each of the categories you see on the screen, you can initialize, and the settings that are currently defined on your system will be discovered by Policy Minder and set as your baseline. For example, if you choose to initialize TCP/IP server category, Policy Minder will go out and examine all of your TCP/IP servers on the system and set as the baseline to be the server's current auto start value. Or if you choose to initialize the system value category, Policy Minder will examine all of your security relevant system values and set that as the baseline for each system value on the system. So Policy Minder can help you get started. We understand that it may be difficult to get down to specifics, but Policy Minder can be very granular, and you could build templates for things like your user profiles, your libraries, and their objects, as well as the directories on your system. We believe that everyone has an idea of what their security policies are supposed to be. They may just not have had them written down and formalized, and Policy Minder will help you with that function. When you create a template for your user profiles or libraries or directories, the first thing that you will do is define which objects make up or defined in your template. And you can both include and omit. So you can get very granular in that definition of what you want to examine. For example, you can define how you for your user profiles for being included or omitted. It's very flexible. You can include profiles based on being a member of a particular group, for example, or being a member of a particular user class, having specific special authorities such as all object, or a naming profile as shown here, which would be user profiles that start with SEC. So you can use wildcards as well. So then you go into the next screen to define your template, and you can actually define the characteristics that you want to ensure the users that you've just defined as included, less the ones you omitted, what characteristics you want them to have. For the example, this one, you wanted them to be in the group sec offer, group profile, security officer user class. You also wanted to have an initial program of QCMD and a library of QSys. Anywhere you see *any, Policy Minder is allowing anything to, it's not going to judge that. It's not part of your policy. Password expiration in this case would be mandated at 30 days. Limited capabilities would be no for any of these. And you would have command auditing turned on. So here's a great feature to make sure that you'll be able to see what people have done. At that point, once you have your policies either initialized or specific templates built, you can run a compliance check to see if and which things are in compliance as well as which things are out of compliance. And if you find areas, again, that are out of compliance, you can use the PolicyMinder Fix-It function to automatically reset your policy, to your configuration to your baseline. So let's take a quick look at a couple of the output reports from PolicyMinder. One report you will get is the Policy All report. So everything you've initialized or built templates for, PolicyMinder will give you a single report for what all of that is. So you can print that out and show that to your auditors. So you can have, what all your security system values are, your password system values, auditing system values, system library list, all fully documented. Any templates that you've built, again, fully documented. So you will document what you've included, what you've omitted, and what the criteria are for that specific template. So you have full documentation on all of the system values, user values, libraries, directories, and various other security configuration items, as you see here. So that's all of your policies. So then you run a compliance check, and you'll get a report. Will be a compliance report. And what would ideally happen is you would get a summary report, and everything. This would list all the major areas of where there are policies either initialized or templates written, and you would like to be able to have a report that showed compliant, compliant, compliant all the way down. So you would be able to hand your auditors your policy report and your compliance report, show them fully compliant, and prove that you are in compliant with all of your policies. But a lot of times we're going to have non-compliant items, so you go back and you would print out the non-compliant issues as to what your policy was and what your values currently are, so you would see which the areas are out of compliance. And again, you could run Fix-It on those to reset those. Let's go back to the slideshow. Finally, we also have SkyView's Audit Journal Reporter, which produces reports of the security and compliant events and actions that are logged into the IBM I Audit Journal. The basic formats of these reports are produced by Audit Journal Reporter are predefined, so you don't have to worry about the intricacies of each type of IBM I Audit Journal entry or how to get the desired information out of the journal and into your report. Getting started with Audit Journal Reporter does require a couple of steps, but you can run in once you have everything set up, and SkyView will help you configure the Audit Journal Reporter software. You first define which users are going to be allowed to run the Audit Journal Reporter reports. It can include both administrators of the product as well as users that receive reports from the product. Certainly doubtful that you'll run all of the reports that are included with Audit Journal Reporter, and I think it's currently in excess of 50 predefined reports. So you'll select the reports that are meaningful to your organization. Most of the reports in Audit Journal Reporter consist of two types of input, a predefined query and also one or more condition list. The query gathers the appropriate Audit Journal entries associated with the report, and the condition list is used to refine or narrow down what will be included in the report. Once you've decided which reports to run, you'll want to view the condition lists for the query, and condition lists are used to ensure that only the appropriate information is included in your reports. By default, all queries obtain information from an extraction file. An extraction file allows you to gather the necessary information needed to generate the reports so that the Audit Journal receivers can then saved and removed from the system. Many organizations are forced into removing audit journal receivers every 2 or 3 days or sometimes less, but only want reports to be generated possibly once a week. Using these extraction files allows you to have the information already ready for the reports to be run. Your organization may be able to keep audit journal receivers on your system long enough to run reports. Therefore, you might not need to do the extraction files. So that's how 3 of the ways that SkyView Partners can help. So I hope this presentation has been helpful to you. If you need more information, you can certainly contact your authorized SkyView reseller, or you can contact us at www.skyviewpartners.com. Thank you again for joining us this morning. You will be getting a copy of this recording after the session, and I wish you all a great day. Thank you all.